Never before have so many children and youth crowded into our classrooms. Today, nearly everyone of school age is in school. They are there to learn about the...
Hey, I'm Skip Elsheimer, and welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. You might notice that I'm in a different position. I'm actually pre-recording this show while I'm running a show on another computer. So bear with me. You do get a chance to see the neon a little bit better. I'm trying to get it to where the camera can actually show you that it says AV Geeks right there. But you do get to see the trophies from winning the toe tapping tournament. But anyways, today I can't be on the show live because we're driving. And so I figured I should show you some films about driving and about cars. So the first film we're going to watch is Visual Perception, Part 2, Identification. We've shown Visual Perception Part 1, Eye Habits, which is a pretty great, it's made by AAA, and it has people wearing these headsets that are looking at where their pupils are to monitor where their eyes are going, and then it somehow imprints it on film. This one is more straightforward driver's ed of looking at potential hazards and looking at things as you drive. So enjoy.
Right in front of me.
What happened here?
This man was driving east. He was heading east at 45 miles an hour at least.
I'd say he was going 50. No.
I was turning south. I was going about 30. She didn't even see me.
30 miles an hour? You switched lanes right in front of me. You didn't even signal that you were
Well,
going
if I was
to
in
switch.
front of you, you should have seen me.
How can I see you when you cut in there at that speed?
Okay,
Well,
one more time,
this is...
again, individually, please.
There is no such thing as an instant replay of a traffic situation. Each viewer's perception varies.
She didn't even see me.
I looked, but I didn't see him coming, is a typical response in an accident situation. Both drivers had different perceptions of what they saw. The eye is the main source of driver information, but perception is more than just seeing. It is the piling up and use of past experience and knowledge through which we interpret what we see and act on in the present. Read and try to remember the sentence which you will see next. Many viewers do not even see the second "the" in the sentence because it does not make sense in terms of our past experience. Here's another example. This could be a rabbit, or a duck, or both, depending upon how you perceive it. If our perceptions differ in such simple visual experiences, it is not surprising that they differ in more complex situations. In an increasingly confused traffic scene, our minds cannot possibly interpret all there is to observe. Our visual perception by learning to identify important traffic information and by organizing it into meaningful patterns. First, we must be selective. Eye movement studies prove we can attend to only one thing at a time, and then only for a fraction of a second, even when driving in moderate traffic. We must be mentally set to identify those clues which affect our intended path of travel. We must also be systematic. Highway events may be classified in three major groups: traffic controls, highway characteristics, and other users. Traffic controls include traffic lights, highway signs, and road markings. Obstructions and temporary road conditions due to construction are also traffic controls which require a high degree of perceptual skill in driving. Organizing highway events requires that the driver identify and interpret traffic signs and relate this to other visual information in the traffic scene almost at the same time. A second way to group highway events is by the condition of the roadway itself, or by highway characteristics. In this case, a two-lane road with a narrow, soft shoulder. And here is another highway characteristic to watch for: an area of reduced space as the street narrows. In this case, the road narrows to 2 lanes as traffic increases on a section of uneven pavement. What changes in highway characteristics do you see in these scenes? Here we are in a narrowing situation, approaching a section of uneven roadway, on a bridge which may have an icy surface. In this case, we're on a freeway with roadway construction obstacles, approaching a foggy area and possible wet pavement. And a large bug has hit and become attached to our windshield. A third group of highway events is other users: bicycles, pedestrians, moving vehicles, and those parked along the intended path of travel. We must continually be alert to identify clues in the actions of other users, which will help us predict how they might behave in the traffic scene. Will this slow-moving farm vehicle continue along the right side of the road? Is it safe to pass? What clues can you identify to predict the next action of this parked vehicle? A good prediction is that this car is about to move into the traffic stream. There is a driver in the car, the brake lights are lit, the blinker warning lights are on, exhaust smoke tells us that the motor is running, and the front wheels are turned towards the street. The faster we travel, the more information, the more clues there are in the traffic scene, the greater the load on our perceptual system. Even in moderate traffic, we find it difficult to select, organize, and be ready for unfamiliar events or changing conditions in the traffic scene. Developing our ability to identify and organize events reduces distractions, minimizes our errors, and helps us make reliable predictions. We can learn to be more selective and systematic in our perception of traffic events. We can learn to identify and classify those changes in traffic controls, highway characteristics, and other users of the highway scene, especially related to our own intended path of travel. You are one of thousands of people hurtling along a freeway, an inner belt, a city street, or an urban avenue at speeds of from 25 to 55 miles per hour, controlling about 2 tons of steel, glass, and plastic, moving past other drivers within distances measured in feet and often in inches. Good drivers don't just guide machines. They are part of an involved and complex process of seeing, identifying, interpreting, and acting upon a mass of information, mostly visual, which we face every day. In an increasingly complex driving situation, your life and the lives of others depend upon your visual perception of the traffic scene. You can begin by learning to identify traffic controls, highway characteristics, and the actions of other users, which will make your intended path of travel safe for yourself and for others.
Yeah, that was great. Total 70s vibe there. Big fan. So the next thing we're going to watch is, I need to see what I have lined up here next, is from the Ohio based Highway Safety Films. Some people think that this was made by the Ohio Highway Patrol because they figure so prominently in the film. But this was a separate private organization that was set up by, I believe, a lawyer or an accountant who basically was creating slideshows of traffic accidents that he would tour around with. And they were so popular that he decided to make a film, actually bring a camera and listen to a police scanner and show up and document horrifying traffic accidents. The first film he did was Signal 30. And he did a whole series of films, but this one is not gory. At least it's not as gory as the other ones. This one is more about driving. It's a driver's ed film. It would have been shown. I've been hesitant to show these because of their length and because they're so gory, but this one, I scanned it and there's no gore in it. Now, I could be wrong. I could have accidentally missed something. Scratch my nose and miss something. But here's Matter of Judgment.
She said she didn't like to talk to boys about serious things, but with me, it was different. How about that?
Sometimes an automobile can seem like a world in itself, a pleasant where the in.
Thank heaven Jim left me the car today. I have so much to do.
And an automobile can seem like a miraculous time one who doesn't have the use of it very often. It makes all those errands almost enjoyable.
Plenty of zip in there now. What a difference that tune-up made.
To drive an automobile today is to be absolute ruler over a package of concentrated horsepower that would have been the envy of the greatest rulers of the ancient world.
That first order sold out in less than a week. Now, if I can just keep them coming from the factory.
The smooth functioning automobiles of today simply do not demand our whole attention. We drive them almost as if we were passengers in them.
The girls picked a perfect day for the luncheon. Now, I think they said Walnut Street. Or was it Oak?
Often the farthest thing from the mind of a driver is the real possibility of misfortune or accident. In a way, perhaps that's as it should be. When life is good and driving the car is a treat and the driver is not doing wrong, why should there be a moment's thought of danger to shadow that good feeling of security? Well, because above everything else, a driver must constantly keep in mind what his basic responsibility is. Sometimes, just when an automobile seems like another world all by itself, there may be someone in another car around the next corner in this world ready to shatter those pleasant thoughts. The responsible driver's thoughts must be on driving, 100%. And that means they must project ahead of his car and all around his car. Over 22% of all the people killed in motor vehicle traffic accidents in the past 5 years died as a result of accidents at intersections. Remember, there are 2 basic standards for determining who has the right-of-way at intersections where there is no visible traffic control. The first car rule says that when 2 or more cars are approaching the intersection in a lawful manner, the car that moves into the intersection first has the right-of-way. Obviously, a driver with good judgment would never try to claim his right-of-way at the risk of causing an accident. The same time rule says that when both cars reach the intersection at the same time, the car on the right has the right-of-way. Of course, at the intersection, the safe driver with good judgment, skill, and proper training doesn't indulge in legal hair-splitting about who must yield. It's best never to take anything for granted. A green light means you have the right-of-way, but it's not guaranteed. Be prepared at every intersection to yield or to use avoidance maneuvers. And the rule of good manners as well as responsible driving is always to yield to pedestrians. And incidentally, if the intersection is engineered with a special turn lane, pull over and get all the way out of the traffic stream until you can turn safely. Keep your front wheels pointed straight ahead so you won't be knocked into oncoming traffic if you should be hit from behind. It is well to have your mind quite clear about the meaning of signs and signals at intersections. The flashing yellow light means proceed through the intersection or pass the signal slowly and with caution. The flashing red light means stop before entering the intersection or at a clearly marked line, and then yield the right-of-way to all vehicles on the through street or highway before entering the intersection. The rule is the same as for a stop sign. A yield sign is somewhat like a stop sign, except that it does not require a full stop unless there is actual cross-traffic present that must be given the right-of-way. Driving today involves some rather complex skills, judgment, and knowledge, and only practice can keep them fresh. The variety of situations encountered each day makes a valuable contribution to a driver's reserve of experience. When an unpracticed driver's mind is preoccupied with errands and the situation is a bit unfamiliar, the shadow of tragedy can be very close. The expressway entrance ramp is the place to build up speed in anticipation of the fast traffic ahead. Inexperienced drivers who stop or are hesitant about entering the expressway traffic create a situation in which regular users of the expressway who expect to move quickly through the entrance might run right into the stopped car, perhaps even knock it into the oncoming expressway traffic. And there's another hazard. An uncertain, hesitant driver stopped at the merging point can't really see the safe gaps in the stream of oncoming traffic and, unless there is a big gap, can't start up fast enough to fit in without danger. Expressways and toll roads sometimes seem to be the nearest thing to flying. But don't be fooled. They require a special level of skill and concentration. Getting off has as many fine points as getting on. A responsible driver starts the turn signals in plenty of time to let other drivers know there's going to be a lane change. And then, checking both mirrors and the blind spot, changes lanes gradually. On the expressway, drivers tend to get adjusted to steady high speeds. The speedometer is the only reliable indicator of speed, while the driver's senses are readjusting to new, lower speed levels. But learning these things on the road in hazardous traffic situations is the wrong way. Heavily traveled roads are not the best place to try to get experience. The horsepower under the hood of many of today's cars gives the driver a personal sensation of power. But even though he can do much to conquer time and distance with this machine, he can't tame the weather with it. No car has power over the elements, and the driver must conform to changing conditions or else. At today's highway speeds, when there's water on the pavement, a car can behave just as if it were on ice. A skid can be a heart-stopping experience, but every driver can learn how to control a skidding car. In a skid, the rear end of the car tends to brake from a straight line and come around toward the front. If the rear end of your car slides to the left, you quickly countersteer to the left. If the rear end swings to the right, steer to the right, then straighten out. Remember, if the rear slides left, quickly steer left. If the rear slides right, steer right. In a power skid, the rear wheels break loose either because you accelerate too quickly or go into a turn too fast. Let up on the gas immediately and steer out of it as you slow down. In the locked wheel skid, your front wheels aren't rolling, so you have no way to steer the car. You handle the locked wheel skid by keeping the wheels rolling. That means you never jam on the brakes. Pump the brakes. That is, apply them and release them in a quick pumping motion. It gives you rolling friction and control of your car. Of course, tires are a factor in skid control. Tests show that tires with good deep treads need less stopping distance on wet, smooth surfaces. What sort of surfaces to look for is very important in identifying skid situations. It doesn't take a hard rain to make a pavement slick. When oily film collects on the surface, just a small amount of moisture produces an extremely slippery situation. Besides damp, wet, icy, and snowy surfaces, a pavement or portion of pavement covered with fallen leaves can put a car into a skid. Loose gravel is another dangerous skid producer. The good driver is aware of what sort of surface is under his wheels and adjusts to the condition. On wet surfaces, there are many safety factors to consider. The texture of the pavement, the amount of water standing on it, the inflation of the tires, the type of tire tread, and above all, the car's speed. Even with good tires, a car going 45 miles an hour on flooded pavement just can't make the same curve it took successfully at 40. In the rain, even a well-drained road holds a film of water that may range from less than 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 inch in depth. At low speeds, the water can be drained out through the tire tread pattern. At higher speeds, a wedge of water starts to form at the front of the contact area, and even with good tread, as the speed gets higher or the water film on the pavement gets thicker, the wedge builds up and moves farther under the tire until it actually lifts the tire right off the pavement, and the tires are just sliding along on top of the water film. They're hydroplaning. That's just fine for boats or water skiers, but extremely dangerous on the highway. To learn about the hydroplaning effect on airplane tires, the National Aeronautics and Space Agency set up complex scientific equipment to observe what actually happens during this phenomenon. They ran a test wheel and tire through water and photographed the effect from below on a glass pavement. Slow motion photography showed the contact of a tire running in 1/2 inch of water at 25 miles an hour. The tire remained in contact, but there was a partial loss of traction, even at this speed. Then the experimental run was repeated at 50 miles an hour with the same wet pavement condition. The test showed a complete absence of contact between the tire and the surface. There was no traction whatever. In full hydroplaning, the tire is actually riding on a layer of water. Control is no more possible than if the car were on ice. NASA studies show new tires will hydroplane in less than 1/2 inch of water and smooth tires in less than 1/10 inch of water, according to the following specifications. They'll hydroplane at 42 miles an hour at a tire pressure of 16 pounds. They'll hydroplane at 51 miles an hour at a tire pressure of 24 pounds. they'll hydroplane at 59 miles an hour at a tire pressure of 32 pounds. Partial and full hydroplaning can be clearly demonstrated in the automobile tire test laboratory. A revolving drum represents the pavement. The tire is under an 800-pound load, representing the weight on one wheel of a car. Water equivalent to normal heavy showers is put on the drum beneath the tire. As the speed is increased, a water wedge penetrates farther and farther under the tire. Then there is partial hydroplaning. Traction is lost and the tire slows down, until at 60 miles an hour it just stops. As it drifts out of contact at this hydroplaning speed, it can easily be moved backwards and forwards by hand under an 800-pound load. That's what actually happens on the wet highway, as demonstrations with test cars have repeatedly shown. On rain-covered roads at 50 or 60 miles an hour or more, your car wheels may hydroplane even with good new tires. So slow down when it's wet. Be especially alert for a heavy film of water on the pavement. Knowing the facts about hydroplaning could save your life. In bad weather or good, when it comes to not being involved in fatal automobile accidents, or any type of driving accidents for that matter, the drivers between 50 and 59 show the best record statistically. Could this be a matter of mature judgment? Oh, no! Blowouts can still happen. Here's what to do if one happens to you. Don't panic. Don't hit the brakes. Let up on the accelerator, hold a straight course, and let the car slow itself down. You can use the brakes lightly, only after you're sure you're holding a steady, straight course down the road. Normally, it takes only 12 pounds of pressure to control the steering wheel. A rear wheel blowout is actually a little more dangerous because you don't have the direct steering control you have on the front wheel to compensate for erratic moves the car may make. If applying the brakes lightly makes the car unsteady, concentrate on steering and just let the car slow itself down and come to a halt naturally. The possible reasons for a blowout include inexperience or carelessness in the repair of a tubeless tire, and driver abuse, such as thoughtlessly hitting sharp objects and curbs or ignoring tire pressures, thus building up destructive heat and breaking down sidewalls. And there's another important cause of blowouts: sustained high-speed driving on a tire that is not built for that kind of travel. Most responsible drivers try to do all they can to make an automobile trip as safe as possible. They get the car in shape, inflate the tires according to the latest technical information available, and they're a little more conscientious than usual about their seat belts. The seatbelt problem is an interesting study in human nature. People will usually buckle up for long trips, but may not use their seat belts for nearby driving. And yet, statistics indicate that 80% of all automobile accidents occur within 25 miles of home. Perhaps a greater realization of the impact forces that are generated in automobile accidents might help the people who have not yet formed the firm habit of using their seat belts. When a car smashes to a stop, the unrestrained human body continues to move forward at driving speed. Then the body impacts and whips into recoil positions. The driver or passenger wearing a buckled-up seatbelt or shoulder harness simply increases his or her chances for survival amidst the overwhelming forces that can be unleashed in an accident. In a collision, unprotected and unrestrained drivers and passengers fly about the car and out of the car with no chance to control or protect themselves. If you, as a driver, are for some reason not concerned about saving yourself, at least keep in mind others riding with you who may feel differently. Remember that in an emergency, your buckled-up seatbelt can keep you from being knocked unconscious and keep you close to the controls of your car. where your actions may be able to protect the safety, perhaps save the life of someone important to you, someone you love. Remembering to buckle up seat belts or other restraining devices is just part of the responsible driver's preparation. On long trips or short jaunts, the driver with good judgment also makes it a point to learn exactly where to go before entering an unfamiliar area. The hazard of trying to locate signs and street house numbers while driving can sometimes produce near tragic consequences. The other driver may not always be so good at evasive maneuvers. A driver who is concentrating very hard on something else doesn't have too much chance of remembering turn signals unless the habit of using them has become absolutely automatic. It shouldn't take a near collision to make the turn signal habit unforgettable. It's simply a matter of knowledge and self-training in a variety of situations. If you're going to turn left at an intersection, you have a responsibility to start your left turn signal soon enough, at least 100 feet from the corner, so that everyone around you knows what you intend to do. If you're going to turn right, put your right signal on at a point where there will be no question about whether you're turning at the next intersection or at a driveway. As a driver, you constantly have the responsibility of informing those around you of your intentions. Oddly enough, it is very often when no other cars are around, when a driver is alone on the road, that the shadow of tragedy hovers closest. In these situations, a few drivers are lucky, but most are not. According to latest National Safety Council figures, 1/3 of all fatal motor vehicle accidents in rural areas and 1/4 of all fatal motor vehicle accidents are run-off-the-roadway accidents. Some tragic cases begin with the dropping of the outside wheels off the edge of a pavement that is higher than the shoulder. When that happens, the wheels catch along the rim of the pavement and can't easily be steered back. If it happens to you, let up slowly on the accelerator. Don't get impatient or embarrassed. Use the brakes very lightly. Don't try to jerk the wheels back by putting heavy pressure on the steering wheel. After slowing to a safe speed, feel the contact. Then, when you can gradually ease the wheels over, do so. In a large proportion of run-off-the-roadway accidents, although no one is alive to say exactly what happened, it seems clear that the driver in some way had lost control of the car. If you're not in condition to drive, don't. Keep yourself alert, aware of what's going on. The responsible driver concentrates on his driving, continuously shows good judgment, and puts distractions out of his mind. The primary task, once you are behind the wheel of a car, is to get yourself and others to your destination without harm. Just getting into a car and putting it in motion is a fairly mechanical act. But safe, skillful driving is not automatic, not something you do with one small part of your mind while the rest thinks of something else. Safe driving in today's traffic is largely a matter of judgment, and that includes courtesy, experience, knowledge, and constant awareness of the developing situation. Driving a car involves social as well as legal responsibilities, and each driver who takes his responsibilities seriously is a helpful example to those around him. The more skill and judgment you show, the more you contribute to general driving improvement and safety. What is the measure of a major business corporation today? At General Motors, we think success is measured by how well we operate between the customer's interest and the stockholder's interest, always taking into account all responsibilities to the public at large. We meet our responsibilities to our customers with products they need and want, built and tested to a high level of quality, with safety features designed in at prices they can afford. At General Motors, we have seen widespread acceptance of our products by our customers. This has happened because we are constantly seeking to improve on what we have done before, searching for ways to provide more comfort and convenience, striving to design in the greatest value possible, introducing new models with features that meet the changing desires of the driving public. To us, this is simply doing our job. A major concern has always been the safety of the people who drive our cars. This has been a primary and continuing objective since we built our first cars in 1908. Today, we use sophisticated research equipment, such as driving simulators, to help engineers design in safety right from the very beginning. Our designers never forget that people drive our cars, big people and little people, people of different moods and temperaments, people who are always alert when they're behind the wheel, and people who aren't. We are constantly working to design and test features that will provide them a greater measure of safety inside the automobile structure itself. For years, we have been studying what happens inside our cars in crash situations. At our Safety Research Center, where GM has consolidated and coordinated most of its indoor safety operations, we have built 2 impact sleds for simulating crash tests under repeatable conditions. These cars are heavily instrumented, so the impact forces can be scientifically measured. Velocities can be varied as desired. This kind of testing helps us improve the design of restraint devices and interior configuration. It has helped us in the design of special safety carriers for infants. It is currently helping us in our intensive work to develop an airbag that will inflate automatically upon collision to cushion the passengers against impact. Safety at General Motors begins right at the drawing board, in the design of the frame, the wheels, the brakes, the suspension system, in each of the 14,000 parts that make up a modern automobile. Before the design of a part is approved for production, samples are subjected to hundreds of hours of laboratory testing. This testing is designed to duplicate the use the part may be expected to meet in actual service. It's going on today, right now, in dozens of General Motors laboratories around the United States. Laboratory testing is only one part of the test program that individual components undergo. Parts are assembled into cars and subjected to test driving at our 4,000-acre proving ground in Michigan, our 2,538-acre test facility in Arizona, and wherever else GM engineers may decide to go to get the data they need. In 1969, GM cars were driven 70 million test miles on proving ground roads and public highways. When new parts survive testing like this, the chances are excellent they will hold up well in actual service. To be sure, we put the first production cars through the same kind of rugged test program. Many of the facts our engineers seek can be obtained only by deliberate destruction of test vehicles. Many cars are consumed by this program every year. Our investment in proving grounds, testing facilities, and scientific and engineering personnel is all actively engaged in what we believe is the most extensive safety research program in the world. This is what must be done to obtain the data we need to help us build greater safety into our products. By feeding the test information into computers, we can analyze it quickly, then see that it is shared with safety specialists throughout the corporation and with the government as well. When a new feature is tested and proved, it is incorporated into actual production cars. The traditional model change permits such new developments to be made available to the public at the earliest possible time. General Motors is proud of the many safety features conceived by our design and engineering people. Many were introduced before any government standards were even considered and have become commonplace on all cars today. The energy-absorbing steering column is one example. It was introduced over a year before any government standards for steering systems were adopted. Another is the steering column lock that simultaneously locks the ignition and steering wheel and prevents the transmission from being shifted into gear. This contributes to vehicle safety because 1 out of 6 stolen cars is involved in an accident. It was introduced a year ahead of a government standard. Still, another important safety feature is the side impact bar, introduced by General Motors in 1968. This helps reduce penetration by a vehicle striking from the side. Government standards for side impact are just now being set. They are but 3 of the great number of accident prevention, occupant protection, and anti-theft features on GM cars today. They help explain why the highway fatality rate per miles driven is less than 1/3 of what it was 40 years ago. GM's safety research is not limited to the automobile. Our proving ground facilities provide our engineers excellent outdoor laboratories for the study of highway design. For years, they have been investigating such things as roadside light poles that give way without major damage to car or passengers, guardrails that do a better job, improved materials for road surfaces, safer highway plantings, proper speed limits for various types of open roads and for access ramps. The more of this kind of fundamental research, the safer our highways become. In addition to maintaining facilities at our own Safety Research Center, General Motors has joined with other automobile manufacturers in supporting and contributing to the Highway Safety Research Institute, an independent organization at the University of Michigan that seeks to provide basic research in vehicle and highway safety. We have also made grants totaling several millions of dollars to support highway research by leading universities in New York, Michigan, California, and the Highway Users Federation through the Automobile Manufacturers Association. We take pride in providing leadership and support in an number of new production automobiles and run them through what we call quality audit departments. These are modern scientific test chambers where important elements of automobile construction and operation are checked by experienced inspectors and sensitive electronic test devices. Any problem discovered here can be traced back to its source on the production line and corrections made. Today, as always in our production process at GM, the effort goes on to prevent problems before they occur, to correct those that do occur, and to find and eliminate the reasons for them so they won't occur again. It's a never-ending cycle that seeks to assure our customers products of the highest possible quality. Of course, we recognize the constant challenge we face to maintain the high standards we set for ourselves. We can never be satisfied with the status quo. The dynamic nature of today's competitive society demands innovation and change. Our research scientists and engineers are looking ahead to the future, experimenting with new ideas and concepts that may one day appear in our products. This is a never-ending quest with us and is one important reason General Motors has been the industry leader for so many years. We recognize that there is another and broader facet to meeting our responsibilities. We are all aware of the consequences facing the human race unless the pollution of our water and air is halted. The problem requires the attention of every citizen. But leadership is needed, and it must come from those who have knowledge and resources. Long ago, General Motors joined other concerned business and government organizations to accept this leadership. For nearly 20 years, General Motors has been concerned with the growing problem of pollution. And we were doing something about it long before the problem became a national concern. Here, a mixture of air and exhaust is circulated in artificial light, matching that of the sun on a clear day at high noon. This facility has greatly aided in expanding our knowledge of air chemistry. We have said that we are committed to solving the air pollution problem as far as our automobiles are concerned. As a measure of our commitment, we expect to spend $113 million in 1970 alone on automotive emission control facilities, research, engineering, and testing. We will not hesitate to use a power source other than the internal combustion engine if it solves the emission problem and meets the needs of our customers at a price they can afford. For years, we have been experimenting with cars powered by different types of engines. Our original experimental Firebird 1, displayed first in 1953, was powered by a gas turbine. In 1953, we powered a research bus with a gas turbine. In 1964, our experimental turbo cruiser bus was introduced. We now have another experimental turbine-powered bus designed for rapid transit. And in 1971, we will begin commercial production of a new gas turbine engine that will soon power General Motors trucks and buses. We are very open-minded about new power sources. We have research teams that have built working research vehicles propelled by steam, electricity, stored heat energy, a combination of gasoline and electricity, the Stirling engine, as well as the gas turbine. We have been aided in turbine engine research by our work with aircraft turbine engines. Some alternative power sources show the potential for lower exhaust emissions. None, however, is practical for automobiles in its present form. Even if mass-produced, cars powered by them would have to be sold at a price beyond most people's ability to pay. Steam, in particular, has attracted much attention. Steam engines are currently impractical as power sources because of the problems associated with the freezing of the working fluid and the deterioration of lubricants in the working fluid. Furthermore, current steam engines are too large and heavy to consider them for use by the general driving public. Meanwhile, our research into other power sources goes on. At the same time, our scientists and engineers have been making impressive strides toward their goal of eliminating pollution from cars powered by conventional internal combustion gasoline engines. The three major emissions are unburned hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, and oxides of nitrogen, the same as with other power sources which burn petroleum fuels. GM scientists discovered that 20% of unburned hydrocarbons were emitted through the crankcase vent and 20% through evaporation of gasoline vapors from the fuel tank and carburetor. 60% escaped through the exhaust system, along with carbon monoxide and oxides of nitrogen, both products of combustion. In 1961, we introduced in California a positive crankcase ventilation valve to substantially eliminate the unburned hydrocarbons that were being emitted through the crankcase vent. The PCV appeared on all our new cars in 1963. We have since introduced two exhaust control systems. The AIR is an air pump that reduces exhaust emissions by turning the exhaust manifold into a kind of oxidizing afterburner. Our controlled combustion system heats incoming air for better fuel metering, along with modifications to the combustion chamber and other engine components. Last fall, we introduced a system to control fuel evaporation on 1970 cars sold in California. It vents fumes from the gas tank and carburetor bowl to a charcoal canister. When the car is started, the fumes are fed back to the engine to be burned. It will be installed nationwide on all our 1971 cars. In addition, we are looking into further modification of engine design, improved control systems, and possibly fuel injection for more precise air-fuel ratios. This kind of effort has already caused the total emissions of the three primary automotive pollutants to be significantly reduced. These bars represent the emission levels of pollutants from 1960 vehicles without controls. With the installation of an evaporative control system on all 1970 GM cars sold in California, a system to be installed nationwide on all 1971 GM models, hydrocarbon emissions are reduced by 80% and carbon monoxide emissions by about 65%. Oxides of nitrogen will also be reduced. By 1975, we will have taken another significant step toward automobiles that will be virtually pollution-free. This is truly a remarkable achievement when you consider that only 20 years ago, no one knew how to measure most of the pollutants discharged into the air, much less control and eliminate them. We have also developed a package of engine modifications and maintenance requirements to reduce exhaust emissions substantially from older cars with no exhaust control systems. At the present time, the lead in gasoline leaves deposits in emission control devices. But now that broad-scale availability of unleaded gasolines of 91 research octane number has been promised, we believe it will be technically feasible to develop long-life emission control devices such as exhaust catalytic converters, exhaust manifold reactors, and exhaust gas recirculation systems. Meanwhile, we have announced that all 1971 GM engines can operate on 91 octane gasoline. The New York Times called this announcement the most dramatic action by any industry in the new environmental movement. A new air pollution control facility in California has been made available recently to augment our already widespread research and test activity in this highly complex field. To help assure that our production cars meet emission standards, we have installed sensitive assembly line test equipment that measures the level of exhaust pollutants. Of course, we must never forget that an important factor in automotive emission control today is proper periodic maintenance by qualified service mechanics. General Motors operates 30 training centers around the country to help keep dealership service personnel up to date on the latest product features. This training includes maintenance of the emission control devices on our cars. These centers are modern laboratories where every phase of automobile repair and service
is taught. Even independent garagemen can benefit from this learning, for we recognize that many General Motors cars are serviced at the corner garage or service station. These repairmen must be kept up to date on the latest service information. Thus, owners of General Motors cars must know that proper service and maintenance of their engines and exhaust system are available to them. We must depend on them to be concerned enough about pollution to follow prescribed maintenance schedules. Controlling industrial air pollution is another major goal at General Motors. Here, too, dramatic results have been achieved, especially in our foundries and powerhouses, where the problem is the most difficult to solve. Clearing up the problem requires a high level of technical know-how and very sophisticated equipment. In some facilities, we are using techniques such as high-energy scrubbers that trap more than 98% of particulate pollutants before they reach the atmosphere. At other locations, we have installed electrostatic precipitators to remove fly ash from coal-burning powerhouse stacks. There's no one way to do the job. It depends on each local situation. But the goal is the same, for all our plants to meet today's government requirements and standards and anticipate what will be required in the future. A similar effort is being applied to the control of waste discharges that might pollute our streams and rivers. Impurities in our water must be limited for public health and the avoidance of possible damage to nature's living things. For industrial organizations such as ours, the problems are considerable. Liquids are used in countless manufacturing processes for cooling, for lubricating, for coating, just to mention a few. Controlling the waste products from these processes takes a lot of scientific knowledge, careful planning, and a tremendous investment in equipment. But most of all, it takes the willingness to move ahead. General Motors plants have demonstrated that willingness over the years, long before industrial pollution became a national concern. It's just good business for them to try to conserve natural resources and reuse metals, chemicals, and liquids. Their continuing efforts to improve the environment are part of GM's responsibility as a good industrial neighbor in the communities where they are located. In 1970, our plants will spend $59 million on plant air and water pollution control facilities. Perhaps one of the most interesting techniques for treating air and liquid pollutants was developed by GM engineers for use at a Fisher Body division plant. Here, sulfur dioxide from powerhouse stacks is mixed with liquid waste containing chromate. The two pollutants react chemically and render each other harmless. The result is not only clean water, but clean air as well. Being a good corporate citizen has other facets too. We are acutely aware of the problems that are faced by our cities. A free flow of transportation is vital to the good health of urban communities. This can only occur when the system is properly balanced between different modes of transportation. General Motors has a long record of leadership in public mass transportation. We have urged consideration be given to improve travel on local streets, as well as high-speed highway access, to mass transit by bus and train, to rapid intercity rail travel. We are continually cooperating in all possible ways with federal, state, and local officials concerned with urban transportation. And we have appeared before a congressional committee in support of the proposed new urban mass transportation assistance legislation. To further this effort, our people are working on new concepts of small electric-powered commuter automobiles, experimental rapid transit coaches powered by gas turbines, high-speed trains, and even a new demand-responsive transportation system that provides taxi-like service at fares somewhere between those of a taxi and conventional buses. These vehicles and system concepts are assisting urban planners determine the appropriate mix of modes for each community. Many leaders in our plant cities are also trying to provide help for disadvantaged citizens. In one city, Pontiac, Michigan, General Motors has joined together in a partnership to provide more than $1 million in interest-free loans to a nonprofit minority group interested in inner-city housing. A similar loan has been made to a group in Flint. This concern with the well-being of the disadvantaged also manifests itself in our hiring policies. At the beginning of 1970, the number of GM minority employees was nearly 100,000. That is more than 15% of our total United States employment, a figure that exceeds the national percentage for minorities. We have hired more than 45,000 hardcore unemployed, and in 1969, we provided summer employment for more than 1,900 disadvantaged young people. As employees, these people become part of the large GM family, sharing the same benefits all our employees enjoy. They quickly learn that General Motors is concerned about their well-being, their safety on the job, their advancement as quickly as they meet standards of performance and achievement, their own personal development through a tuition refund educational program, and through corporate encouragement to take an action role in community endeavors for the betterment of all society. At the outset, we asked, what is the measure of a major business corporation today? Our answer is still the way we meet our responsibility to the people we serve, our millions of customers, our nearly 800,000 employees, our 40,000 suppliers, our 1,355,000 stockholders, and to the public at large. The problems of vehicle emissions, pollution from our manufacturing plants, the safety of the persons using our products, mass transit, social needs, these and many others are not new to General Motors. This film report serves to demonstrate some of the progress we have made in solving these problems. However, the job is not finished. Much more needs to be done. We recognize these needs. We understand our responsibilities. We have intensified our efforts. We will continue to dedicate our worldwide talents and facilities to solving these problems. We are confident our stockholders would want it no other way.
Enjoy. Yeah, these were pretty significant, and some of these films are actually being shown today. It was interesting when I would get films from a school, they would say, yeah, you're getting all the films except for these, which the coach shows every year when he teaches driver's ed. I'm like, oh, okay, I get that. All right, this next film is an interesting one, and this is why we like collecting films. This is a niche film for shareholders at GM. And so this film shows like what's going on at GM in that given year. And so enjoy.
There goes Mr. Speed King himself, passing on a curve. Hey, what's the matter, lady? Your arm broken? Hey, what's the big idea? All right, pull over there, Jack. You need to hog the whole road? Lady, that stop sign means you. What you're seeing is one of the most interesting and important experiments in driver education today. And it proves that some people really do drive like 6-year-olds. For example, most of our traffic and motor safety problems are created by a few childishly inconsiderate drivers. Drivers who play childish but dangerous games with everyone else on the road. Lady, that stop sign means you. Well, if bad driving habits are childish, when is the best time to learn to be a good citizen behind the steering wheel? Well, based on the old proverb that as the twig is bent, so is the tree inclined, at Garfield Elementary School in Phoenix, Arizona, a new approach to driving safety education has been developed. School children are learning about the automotive age before they learn their ABCs. Driver education begins soon after school opens for kindergarten classes, first, second, and third grades. First, a magic safety show dramatizes the basic rules of safety. Each year's magic show is new and different and wonderful to behold. And while they're watching the rabbit that comes out of the hat and the mysteriously changing stop sign, even the smallest children learn that the big men in the blue uniforms are their friends. The familiar games of kindergarten have been modernized to teach a life-saving lesson, the meaning of stop and go. First graders get out into the big wide world to learn by doing. Traffic lights, traffic signs, crosswalks become familiar through first-hand experience. And as for jaywalking, not these kids. It seems that the younger we are, the faster we can learn new things. And it seems the earlier we learn something, the more likely it is to become a part of our basic character. Almost every small child has the capacity for learning courtesy and sportsmanship. And these are the simple basics of good driving attitudes. On tabletops, with tiny cars, first graders learn an awareness of the rights of others and the need for rules and regulations to protect those rights. At first, it's hard to see why we have to stay on the right side of the road, especially when we don't know right from left. But safety consciousness is something that can be learned along with spelling and arithmetic, and more fun, too, even though it means learning how to wait your turn with self-control and good sportsmanship. But toys are just toys. There's nothing like the real thing. And here's the real thing. Real tires with real air in them, headlights that work, a horn that blows. This car, mounted on blocks, is called the Phoenix Link Trainer, patterned after the famous aviation trainer on which so many pilots learned the fundamentals of flying without leaving the ground. Now, while he's learning, young Mr. Future Driver may rack up quite a few miles without going anywhere. But one proud day, there's that temporary driver's permit as a reward for all the hours of practice. This is it, even though it's only a beginner's driving course. Yeah, the first time behind the wheel of the one boy power automobile in motion. But driving is a privilege that must be earned. Young Jimmy, for example, he had the idea that school was just about as bad as prison, and maybe if he absolutely refused to study, he might be sent home. And then he found out that no school, no driving. Today, Jimmy isn't exactly a top student, but he's in there trying. With the help of the older students, tomorrow's drivers learn how to take care of their cars before they drive on the advanced course. The advanced driving course has just about everything that the American motorist encounters in his driving about town and across country. Highways, city streets, crosswalks, pedestrians, traffic signals and policemen, and, of course, country roads and detours. Everyone takes his turn at being driver, pedestrian, or policeman. Traffic violators get tickets and are brought to trial before a jury of their classmates. Now, crime just doesn't pay. This batch of hot rodders have had their licenses suspended for a day. At a most impressionable time of life, an important rule of society is learned. Laws are meant not to restrict, but to protect. For 3 years, in the first, second, third grade, children learn through actual experience the reason for safety laws. They develop self-confidence and the respect for the rights of others. Courtesy and cooperation and sportsmanship are practiced until they become habits. Once established, these habits pay off. And when tomorrow's drivers outgrow the small cars, safety on 2 wheels is stressed in the Phoenix program in preparation for the day when actual driving instruction begins. Hey, do you remember your first driving lesson? There seemed to be so many things you had to learn all at once. But this high school student has been driving since kindergarten days. And now, behind the wheel of a fine, modern car, can concentrate on becoming an expert. And with a built-in code of driving ethics, she can soon become a responsible member of the driving community. Even the hot rod addict with his craving for speed is given a chance to release his youthful energies without injuring himself or others. Hot rod clubs, organized and supervised by local and state police, stage special races under established safety rules. Now, there's plenty of speed here, but the boys themselves will drop a member for even a minor traffic violation. That's a tougher sentence than a police judge could or would impose. While most teenagers behave themselves at the wheel, well, there always has to be someone who's the exception. Someone who hasn't learned that safety makes sense. In the judge's private chambers, the juvenile traffic offender appears with his parents for a friendly but a serious discussion of his case. If he has recklessly risked his own life and the lives of others, his license is suspended. And he's sent to Phoenix's attitude school for 5 2-hour classes. In this attitude school, state, county, and city police officers tell how laws and ordinances are passed by the people for their own common protection. Scientific tests and instruments are used to explain depth perception, reaction time, and muscular coordination, and to emphasize the importance of looking where you're going, of being on your toes, of being careful. Written examinations bring out the fine points of driving. And finally, the attitude school students ride in patrol cars to see for themselves why safety is important. In the past few years, thousands of graduates of the school have had their licenses restored because their attitudes have changed through better understanding of their cars, and their laws, and their policemen. The parents and teachers and the police of Phoenix don't claim that they've found the perfect answer to the problem of educating drivers for tomorrow, but they have shown what one community can do to help make streets and highways safer and more pleasant for all of us. And here's an interesting sidelight for you to think about. One of the least expected dividends of the program is an improvement in adult driving habits. You see, parents, in setting good examples for their children, learn to be safer drivers themselves. They have to. Tomorrow's drivers won't excuse careless drivers.
All right. The last film is this is another film about driving, and this was probably shown in theaters as a short, but also shown at other places. Jimmy Stewart narrates, and this is called Tomorrow's Drivers, and it's showing how we're teaching kids at an early age how to be conscientious driving and pedestrian and when they're on a bike. But of course the message is, look, these little kids can do it. Why can't you do it? So here's tomorrow's drivers. So great. I like that little tiny street setup. It's really kind of great. Well, thanks again for tuning in today. If you like what you saw, you can buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/avgeeks. We will be drinking coffee on the road, so that will be taken. You can also visit and buy DVDs at avgeeks.com. And I just noticed I misspelled visit. And you can see other shows that we put online. And also you can tell the world that you like AV Geeks by hitting the like button or the thumbs up or the notification, any of those things. So thanks so much for tuning in today. We will be back again tomorrow. It will probably be another pre-recorded show. But we'll see you soon. Take care.